Boa tarde, bem-vindos. Good afternoon, welcome. Buenas tardes, bienvenidos. Estamos casi listos para comenzar el webinar. Les recordamos que este webinar va a ser realizado en su mayoría en inglés y portugués, por lo que les recomendamos en utilizar la barra debajo en la que encontrarán los idiomas para la traducción. Esta será en inglés, español, portugués e francês. Boa tarde a todos, bem-vindos a este webinar para o lançamento do relatório da revisão da capacidade de cibersegurança da República Federativa do Brasil. Bem-vindos todos. O webinar vai ser feito na maior parte em inglês e português, porque temos a tradução na parte de baixo. Pode fazer clique no ícone do globo. Vamos ter a interpretação, tradução em inglês, português e espanhol. Welcome everyone. We are almost ready to start the webinar, for which this will be taking place in its majority in English and Portuguese. We invite you to click on the bottom icon, the globe icon, for interpretation in English, Portuguese, and Spanish. We will be starting in just a few minutes.
Esse é só isso deles. Ele só por enquanto o pessoal está logando e está fazendo as configurações da lista.
We will begin in just about 2 minutes. Nos vamos a comenzar en 2 minutos. Vamos a dar comienzo en 2 minutos. Muchas gracias. Queremos também lembrar que todas essas apresentações não refletem necessariamente os pontos de vista da Secretaria-Geral dos Estados Americanos e os seus governos dos Estados membros. We would like to remind you that all presentations in this webinar do not necessarily reflect the views of the General Secretariat of the Organization of American States and its member states. Las opiniones expresadas en este webinar no reflejan necesariamente los puntos de vista de la Secretaría General de la Organización de los Estados Americanos y de sus Estados miembros. Para seguir o conteúdo do webinar, os invitamos a acessar nossa conta do Twitter, OEA Ciber, To access any of the content of this webinar, please follow our Twitter account, OEA_cyber. Para accesar el contenido de este webinar, favor de seguir a nuestra cuenta de Twitter, OEA_cyber. Sin más preámbulo, quisiera dar la bienvenida a la secretaria Farah Urrutia, secretaria de la Seguridad Multidimensional de la Organización de los Estados Americanos. Muchísimas gracias, secretaria, tiene la palabra.
Muchísimas gracias, Rolando. Para mí un placer estar hoy con ustedes. Yo soy una de las pocas excepciones que hablará en español. Estimados colegas, panelistas y participantes, es un honor acompañarlos hoy en el lanzamiento de este importante y primer reporte, Revisión de Capacidades de Ciberseguridad de la República Federativa de Brasil. Quisiera aprovechar la oportunidad para saludar a las distinguidas autoridades que nos acompañan en el día de hoy, el general Antonio Carlos de Oliveira Freitas, asesor especial de información del Gabinete de Seguridad Informática de la Presidencia de Brasil, y Liz Davidson, ministra consejera de la Embajada del Reino Unido en Brasil. Un gusto compartir con ustedes esta tarde. La histórica cooperación entre la OEA y Brasil ha sido larga y estrecha, siendo Brasil uno de los 21 países fundadores de nuestra organización. A través de las décadas, la OEA y Brasil han buscado promover iniciativas que fortalezcan la democracia, los derechos humanos, el desarrollo y, por supuesto, la seguridad en las Américas. La Secretaría del Comité Interamericano contra el Terrorismo, CICTE, a través de nuestro programa de ciberseguridad, ha colaborado en numerosas instancias con el gobierno de Brasil para impulsar el diálogo y las buenas prácticas en la ciberseguridad en nuestra región, así como reforzar las capacidades técnicas y operacionales que contribuyen a la resiliencia cibernética de nuestras naciones. En los últimos 2 años, la OEA ha implementado más de 10 iniciativas en Brasil relacionadas con el fortalecimiento de sus capacidades, al igual que muchas otras actividades dentro de la región que cuentan con participación de representantes brasileños. Estas incluyen entrenamientos para autoridades policiales y judiciales en inteligencia de fuentes abiertas, cursos en Derecho Internacional aplicado al ciberespacio, al igual que la organización del OEA Cyber Women Challenge, que busca cerrar la brecha de género en el sector de ciberseguridad. Todas estas iniciativas representan exitosos proyectos que han sido impulsados por la colaboración e importante apoyo económico de donantes tales como el Reino Unido y Canadá. De igual forma, la OEA ha sido instrumental en facilitar las consultas regionales del Grupo de Expertos Gubernamentales de las Naciones Unidas en el avance del comportamiento de los estados en el ciberespacio dentro del contexto de la seguridad internacional bajo el liderazgo del embajador Guilherme de Águia Patriota. Esta publicación que presentamos hoy es un esfuerzo colaborativo de la OEA, la Universidad de Oxford y el Gobierno de Brasil, en hacer un análisis de las capacidades de ciberseguridad dentro del país y de esta forma poder tener aún más claridad sobre qué acciones y medidas se requieren implementar. Como lo he mencionado, esta publicación ha sido liderada por el Centro Global de Capacidad en Seguridad Cibernética de la Universidad de Oxford. En conjunto con nuestro programa de ciberseguridad, tiene un carácter completamente académico y técnico. De igual forma, quisiéramos reconocer y resaltar el valioso apoyo del Gabinete de Seguridad Informática de la Presidencia de Brasil. Aunque hace un par de semanas presentamos nuestro reporte regional desarrollado en conjunto con el BID, Brasil se convierte ahora en el primer país en hacer públicos los resultados de este esfuerzo de 2 años. De igual forma, quisiera resaltar que es la primera vez que aplicamos un análisis tan detallado y comprometido sobre el modelo de madurez de la capacidad de seguridad cibernética para las naciones CMM, por sus siglas en inglés. Dicho modelo contempla diferentes instancias e indicadores, los cuales nos ha permitido obtener un panorama comprensivo del estado de la ciberseguridad de este país. Cada una de las dimensiones que hemos analizado están compuestas por un número de factores que los componen. Estos factores presentan, a su vez, un número de aspectos e indicadores que describen los pasos y acciones que definen el estado de madurez de dicha dimensión. Finalmente, se incluyen recomendaciones que tienen como objetivo asesorar y señalar los pasos a seguir para mejorar la capacidad de la seguridad cibernética actual, de conformidad con las consideraciones del CMM. Este modelo se aplicó en Brasil y a través de esta metodología pudimos constatar los importantes avances que ha logrado el país en materia de ciberseguridad y capacidades de respuesta a incidentes. Si bien mis colegas presentarán los resultados específicos del reporte, considero importante destacar que Brasil se ha unido a 11 otros países de la región que ya poseen una estrategia de ciberseguridad. La existencia de la misma no solamente representa la voluntad del gobierno de Brasil y sus autoridades en comprometerse con la ciberseguridad de su nación, sino también en un norte claro para los demás componentes de la sociedad civil y el sector privado a sumar esfuerzos para mejorar su resiliencia. De igual forma, celebramos la existencia de protocolos claros para el manejo de incidentes cibernéticos por parte de los diferentes equipos de respuesta que están bajo la dirección de la Presidencia de la República y sus diferentes organismos de ciberseguridad. La lectura de este reporte es recomendable y de suma importancia para todos aquellos actores que diseñan, adoptan y ejercen políticas en temas de ciberseguridad a nivel estatal y nacional. Si bien el contenido se enmarca en el contexto brasileño, su contenido puede guiar acciones derivadas de buenas prácticas y lecciones concretas para el avance de las capacidades de nuestra región entera. De la misma manera, el reporte indica nuevas áreas en que los diferentes actores de la sociedad brasileña y nuestra organización podrán forjar la ya existente y notable cooperación con el gobierno de Brasil. No debemos olvidar que la ciberseguridad es un esfuerzo compartido, y es por ello que este reporte contempla diversos indicadores que deben ser revisados por todas las partes interesadas en preservar la seguridad del país y de la región. Permítame concluir reiterando nuestro agradecimiento al gobierno del Reino Unido, al gobierno de Canadá, a la Universidad de Oxford y a las diferentes instituciones brasileñas que hicieron posible esta publicación. Estamos seguros que a través de su continuo apoyo y la difusión de este documento podemos continuar el trabajo de nuestra organización en asegurar la democracia, los derechos humanos, la seguridad y el desarrollo de nuestros Estados miembros. Las recomendaciones dentro de ellas serán parte esencial en el fortalecimiento de la ciberseguridad del hemisferio, ayudándonos a afrontar nuevos desafíos y tomar ventaja de oportunidades que nos presenta la tecnología. Muchísimas gracias y muy buena reunión.
Muchísimas gracias, secretaria, por sus gratas palabras de bienvenida. Agora quero dar a bem-vinda ao General Antônio Carlos Oliveira Freitas, assessor especial do GCI da Presidência da República Federativa do Brasil. General, a palavra é sua.
Boa tarde a todos. É um grande prazer estar presente nesta reunião e quero saudar todas as autoridades da OEA presentes, o senhor Belisario Contreras, nosso companheiro de trabalho, a senhora Farah Urrutia, a senhora Liz Davidson, da Embajada do Reino Unido, coronel Arthur Sabah, o professor Michael de Oxford e todas as demais autoridades presentes, senhoras e senhores. Em primeiro lugar, gostaria de agradecer à Organização dos Estados Americanos, entidade organizadora deste evento, pela oportunidade de dirigir algumas palavras em nome do Gabinete de Segurança Institucional da Presidência da República do Brasil. O lançamento deste relatório de maturidade em segurança cibernética utilizou o framework desenvolvido pela Universidade de Oxford e contou com o apoio do Centro de Capacidade em Segurança Cibernética Global, daquela renomada universidade. O relatório hoje apresentado é produto de um trabalho hercúleo que teve início em 2018 e contou com diversas entrevistas e sucessivas revisões e atualizações. No Brasil, a fase de entrevistas contou com o apoio de uma série de órgãos, tanto do setor público quanto do setor privado, aos quais agradeço pela valorosa contribuição. As entrevistas proporcionadas por tais órgãos permitiram traçar um panorama da maturidade do Brasil pela aferição de uma série de fatores atinentes à segurança cibernética. Este panorama, fruto de um trabalho sistemático e meticuloso, é primordial para o autoconhecimento da segurança cibernética em diversos setores da nossa sociedade e para o consequente levantamento de oportunidades de melhoria nessas áreas. A título de exemplo, podemos identificar uma necessidade de se aprimorar a cultura de segurança cibernética na sociedade brasileira, como resultado de fatores dessa dimensão encontrarem-se em estágios iniciais. Em contrapartida, o relatório apresentou um maior grau de maturidade em outros fatores, tais como a resposta a incidentes, incident response e normativos legais, legal frameworks. Dessa forma, entendemos que o mapeamento dos estágios de maturidade de cada um dos fatores do relatório nos permite elaborar políticas públicas mais efetivas para o crescimento do Brasil, bem como direcionar o emprego de recursos de forma mais judiciosa. Acreditamos ainda que o resultado mais importante do trabalho seja sensibilizar nossa sociedade quanto à relevância e à transversalidade da segurança cibernética, bem como as formas pelas quais ela pode impactar em nossas vidas. Por fim, agradecemos à OEA e à Universidade de Oxford o trabalho que foi realizado e informo que o GSI permanece à disposição para continuar trabalhando em conjunto com os órgãos diretamente interessados, a fim de elevarmos de forma equânime os níveis de maturidade em segurança cibernética na sociedade brasileira. Muito obrigado a todos.
Obrigado, General, pelas boas palavras de bem-vindo. Now I would like to introduce Ms. Liz Davidson, Deputy Head of the United Kingdom Embassy in Brazil. Ms. Davidson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Orlando. Boa tarde a todos os presentes. Meus cumprimentos à senhora Farah Urrutia e ao senhor General Antônio Carlos, nas figuras de quem agradeço à OEA e ao governo brasileiro pela gentil oportunidade de compartilhar esse webinar em torno de um assunto tão caro ao meu país. Estou muito feliz por estarmos hoje celebrando o lançamento de uma importante análise de capacidade de segurança cibernética brasileira e vou compartilhar o porquê eu considero este um momento importante. A atividade cibernética mal intencionada cresceu em intensidade complexidade e gravidade nos últimos anos, com agentes hostis visando nossa infraestrutura nacional crítica, instituições democráticas, negócios, mídia e indivíduos. Todos podemos concordar que esse não é um desafio novo. Porém, a crise global trazida pela pandemia da Covid-19 expôs ainda mais alguns dos desafios que enfrentamos enquanto governos no âmbito da segurança cibernética. E a troca de experiências e o apoio entre governos se faz ainda mais importante. Assim, ficamos muito honrados de que o Programa de Acesso Digital do governo britânico apoiou o desenvolvimento deste relatório com o Brasil e torcemos para que seja, como é para nós, um importante instrumento no aprimoramento de nossas capacidades. Afinal de contas, é extremamente útil ter um modelo robusto, baseado em evidência, que ajude os países a revisar a maturidade da sua capacidade de segurança cibernética em diferentes dimensões, permitindo uma autoavaliação, priorização e melhor planejamento para aprimoramentos onde necessário. O extenso trabalho de apoio para a capacitação do governo do Reino Unido nessa agenda representa nosso comprometimento em ajudar no fortalecimento da confiança da agenda com parceiros. Desde 2012, o Reino Unido apoiou mais de 100 projetos de capacitação ao redor do mundo. Este apoio incluiu avaliações de capacidade de segurança cibernética nacional, como o discutido hoje, conscientização pública, aconselhamento sobre regulamentações, apoio à promoção de melhores padrões da indústria, exercícios de crime cibernético, treinamento de aplicação da lei e fortalecimento de equipes de resposta a incidentes de segurança cibernética. Mas o mais importante dessas experiências é que nós aprendemos e evoluímos tanto quanto os parceiros que apoiamos, pois nenhum país encontrou o modelo perfeito de segurança cibernética. O Reino Unido está, portanto, empenhado em promover estruturas de estabilidade internacional para o ciberespaço, com base na aplicação do direito internacional existente e, principalmente, medidas de construção de confiança entre parceiros. Acreditamos que o Brasil tenha um importante papel regional e global a desempenhar, além de seu envolvimento no BRICS, e esperamos engajar-se com eles também por meio de fóruns multilaterais. Por sinal, ficamos muito felizes em saber da decisão do Brasil em aderir à Convenção de Budapeste. À medida que nosso relacionamento cibernético bilateral cresce, o Reino Unido deseja trabalhar ainda mais com o Brasil, aprendendo com sua experiência em algumas áreas e, quando apropriado, transmitindo as lições que aprendemos com outras, como na educação. Nesse contexto, ficamos também muito felizes em termos podido realizar no passado um diálogo de assuntos cibernéticos e torcemos para que, em breve, retomemos conversas para a próxima edição. Por fim, gostaria de relembrar que o Programa de Acesso Digital não diz respeito somente à segurança cibernética, tendo como propósito catalisar o acesso digital inclusivo, acessível e seguro, principalmente para populações mais vulneráveis, e usar a inclusão digital como base para um ecossistema digital mais próspero. Estou muito animada para ouvir os colegas de Oxford e da OEA sobre o processo do relatório e reitero nossa disposição para explorarmos conjuntamente oportunidade de cooperação dentro da agenda cibernética e de acesso digital mais amplamente. Obrigada.
Obrigado, senhora Davidson, pelas boas-vindas. Agora vamos a ter a apresentação do relatório por parte do professor Michael Goldsmith, da Universidade de Oxford, e depois do nosso gerente do programa de cibersegurança, Belisario Contreras. Mr. Goldsmith, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon or good evening, depending on which part of the world you're in. I'm currently in France, so it's late-ish evening here. I'd like to express my gratitude in particular to General Oliveira de Freitas for his leadership in Brazil and in this exercise, and also all his officials and all the other many participants who took part in the various consultations that we had. Without this broad participation, we would not get nearly such a good picture. It's also refreshingly open to publish such a detailed report on the cybersecurity state of a nation. We're actually finding that many countries do not find it as frightening as they might originally think it would be to make this open. And we identify weaknesses as well as strengths in a country, but identifying those helps you fill the gaps. And sharing that information broadly means that you can get all aspects of society coming together to help address the progress that needs to be made. The cybersecurity capacity maturity model that we developed in Oxford with help from around the world, there were over 200 global experts who we consulted in the 18 months it took to come up with the first draft of the model, and further ones who have contributed to its subsequent revision. And we are a output of the London process that gave rise to the global conferences on cyberspace, which William Hague instituted with the first GCCS in London. In the second one in Budapest, he announced a competition would be held among the academic centres of excellence in cybersecurity research, which had recently been recognised by GCHQ among UK universities, to set up a capacity centre for cybersecurity. And the team from Oxford, using expertise from other universities as well, was successful in that competition. And we came in with the idea that this needed to be broadly drawn. So not only concentrating on policy and strategy, which is where some people in the field are more naturally looking for progress, and not only on the technical side, which is where a different constituency feels is most important, but legal, which is widely recognized. There's been a lot of global effort on advancing those aspects of the world, but education and societal attitude, the cyber culture of the country, are equally important, we felt. And I think we have managed to make that a credible position in the 6 or so years that we've been working on this. The consultative process which developed the model was, as I said, very broad, and there's a tagline which I don't think has ever made it onto our official words, but which I usually produce at these points to say that this model is by the world, for the world. We don't claim any proprietary ownership of it, and you could use it for self-assessment if you are a brave country, but we think it is almost certainly better to have someone with experience of deploying the model come to guide you through it and help keep you honest and stop people from grabbing for numbers, as I think you see in some of the other indices that are around. As Secretary Urrutia said, this is a very much more detailed report than appears in the regional studies that the OAS produces. they are gathering the information on the same things in their surveys and interviews, but they don't have the resource to produce a 90-page document for each of them. And so if you look at the regional study that was published 2 weeks ago, you'll find that every country gets 4 pages. And so this report, which is about 90, goes into far more detail than the overview could provide. There are some other interesting things about the OAS activity. Because they are able to repeat it across the region, it means that we are starting to get multiple data points for the same country. While advancing the cybersecurity of a nation or helping it identify where its gaps are important things which we think are a good side effect of our research. What we are really trying to do is to find out what interventions do advance the maturity of a nation. And that means that we need to, we could not think of any better way of doing that with scientific rigor than measuring before and after and trying to identify what caused changes and where the most successful changes happened, what they did right, and where there is less success, what was perhaps missing. Brazil is now probably the most examined country in the world, because not only did they have the 2015 OAS survey, but we came in 2018 and revisited in 2019 for what we called a validation workshop, where we brought back in many of the same participants and some who weren't able to make the first consultations. And then there was considerable interaction with the government over the next year, so that we had to further update the report earlier this year to show the latest progress. But Latin America isn't the only place which has put itself through this process. There's now more than 80 countries, including the 30-odd OAS ones, which have had a review. And not only the OAS ones have had repeats, we've now done a second review in Kosovo, which has been published, and another one in Uganda, which we are in the process of writing the report on. And we are hoping that we will get many more multiple data points over the few coming years. There, as you can see, there's been a lot of activity in Africa and particularly in the Balkans in Europe, but also across parts of Central and Southern Asia, and a large scattering of points in the Southern Pacific, because we now have a collaboration in place with the Oceania Cybersecurity Centre, which was set up in Melbourne by the state government of Victoria. And the new kid on the block is the Cybersecurity Capacity Centre for Southern Africa, which opened in Cape Town in this northern spring, so their autumn. And it was slightly unfortunate that its formal launch was planned to coincide almost exactly with the widespread travel restrictions arising from COVID. So we haven't done as much in person with them as we would have liked, but we have tried to find ways of conducting reviews virtually, and we hope that this will prove successful in future. I can't hope to summarize a 90-page document in a 15-minute talk, but I've pulled out some highlights in these slides. And the thing which has probably made the greatest change to not only Dimension 1 on policy and strategy, but across the board is the adoption of a cybersecurity strategy, which happened earlier this year. It's been quite a long time in the coming, but the wheels of government always roll slowly, and it takes care and effort to come up with a good strategy, and I think Brazil has now done that. Incident response and critical infrastructure protection are both things which have made good advances. Crisis management is now has good protocols and has good training and exercises, which should advance this even further in the coming years. There's a specialized unit for cyber defense, and the one bémol, as the French would say, is the lack of involvement of the private sector in the emergency communication network, which means that the redundancy and resilience of the communication network is perhaps not all that it could be. There is some development of a cybersecurity mindset in government and the private sector, but while that is still quite underdeveloped, the last year or so has shown a positive trend. E-government and e-commerce services are becoming increasingly important and promoted by the government. And on the downside, the reporting mechanisms which have been put in place appear to be used rather sparingly, and there are not many signs that they are being promoted by the public and private sectors. Media and social media coverage of cybersecurity is also a bit patchy. NIC.br leads the national program for raising awareness on cybersecurity and is the activities of non-governmental organizations. The awareness raising for business leaders is perhaps rather limited. And they need to promote cybersecurity education in schools as well as in universities has been identified and is being promoted by leading government industry stakeholders. And there is quite impressive amounts of professional training available, responding to a high demand for cybersecurity professionals. The data protection law was expected to take effect in August 2020. In preparation for this talk, I tried to check whether it had, and there appear to be some delays, at least in its enforceability and sanctions, but that will come. And for the last year and a half, Brazil has been starting its accession process to the Budapest Convention as an observer. The sexual harassment law that came into force in September 2018 is perhaps it is certainly among the most advanced for dealing with issues such as revenge porn and so on. And we always have to have a non-positive point to show that we are not perfect. The investigative and prosecution capacities at both federal and state levels are good, but there is a relatively lack of training and funding for law enforcement judiciary. Roles and responsibilities, though, have been established which are clear and functional, and there is collaboration between the law enforcement side of the state and the internet service providers, who, of course, own much of the data that is essential for exploring the problems that might arise. Standards are making good progress. The internet infrastructure is well established. Software quality, I think, a universal problem is that it will vary across public and private sectors. And it tends to be that international companies help drive that in the private sector. The security controls are fairly broadly deployed in the country, but they are particularly highly advanced inside the federal public administration. There's encouragement for the use of cryptography, and there is a developing market for cybersecurity technologies, and a good vulnerability disclosure framework, which is often the weakest point in this dimension, is also in place. I'll just bring out some of the main highlights of our recommendations and outlook. I believe Contreras will be speaking about this after me. But one thing that was quite clear is that the difference between 2015 and 2018 was perhaps less dramatic than we might have hoped. But between 2018 and 2019, and in the 9 months or so since 2019, what we have been informed by the government contributions to the report, it's obviously accelerating progress, particularly in strategy and legal dimensions. The main recommendations can be summarized as to bring in the private sector and other stakeholders in areas such as the implementation of the National Cybersecurity Strategy, incident response, CNI protection, and so on. And also, of course, to continue working closely with the OAS. The cybersecurity mindset could do with further development, needs awareness raising programs, and getting more interest in media and social media. The reporting mechanisms need better promotion, and the internet service providers and NGOs need to be brought in closer in all those activities. Cybersecurity needs to be rolled out and brought into the mainstream throughout the education system, and there need to be training and incentives to meet market needs and drive innovation in that area. And there's a need to foster collaboration to fight cybercrime and implement standards. But probably the most important message is that it would be very good to continue working with international partners to consolidate the gains of the past 5 years and the positive trend from the last 2. And one elephant in the room, which we can't ignore, is that the global move to much more remote working has also presented new opportunities for cybercrime and other malicious activities. And so that is something which is going to need looking at in this year and the next until the world returns perhaps to normal. This is something which in Oxford we are planning to do some urgent research on. There are many resources which describe the work we've been doing around the world. The portal of the Global Forum for Cyber Expertise, at civilportal.org, contains everything there is to know pretty much. And we have our own website, which is under development continuously, but you are welcome to come and join, and you will find the text of the model and further details on what we have done in the region on that site. But at this stage, I will say obrigado to all of you and hand you back.
Thank you, Professor Goldsmith. In case anyone from the public does have any questions, we have the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to share any of your thoughts, and we will hopefully raise them after Mr. Contreras' presentation. Mr. Contreras, you may begin.
Sorry. Thank you, Rolando. Boa tarde para todos. Creo que voy a dañar un poco la lengua, pero mi portuñol no es tan bueno sin algo adentro. Pero quisiera agradecer a General, a Freitas, a colegas do DICIC, a Coronel Sabat, Coronel Fontenelle, a todo el equipo que por 2 años apoyó esta iniciativa. Así como a colegas da Universidad do Oxford e governo do Reino Unido. Es una honra para UEA o para nuestro equipo estar hoy con ustedes en este hito, presentando ese relatorio que es único en su esencia, y además tratándose de un país como Brasil. Yo también quisiera reconocer el liderazgo de Secretaria de Seguridad Multidimensional, Farah Urrutia, así como de Secretaria Ejecutiva do CICTE, Alison Agostrepo, e aprovecho a oportunidad para reconocer e felicitar o trabalho do embajador Guilherme Patriota, o como su presidente do GGE das Nações Unidas, que está con nós como participante. É todo mi portuñol. Agora eu vou trocar a inglês. Thank you once again to our colleagues at the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center, and Michael especially, for your ongoing partnership and commitment to cybersecurity here in Brazil and at the region. I would like also to reiterate our gratitude to all the institutions, from DUCIC to Itamaraty and other, like several actors, more than 50, probably it's a greater number, the one that participated in this exercise. Again, it took us 2 years, several revisions, but for us, it was really worth it. As Michael and our previous speaker were saying, 2020 has been a very particular year for us. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen transformation on the way we approach work, health, and overall daily living. Despite this being an immediate challenge and obvious challenges, this year it has been remained quite active for the OES. We have several developments, but just a couple of weeks ago, we launched a regional report that also based on the CMMs. We also have been implementing several initiatives at both the policy, technical, and awareness level. Many of these has been with the greater support of the United Kingdom, but also other actors and partners like the United States, Canada, and the Netherlands. Several issues has been touched, and we are truly grateful for all the continued support. I would like to share with you a couple of findings. The cybersecurity capacity review for the Federative Republic of Brazil, again, is one of the first of its kind. Although we have implemented these detailed reports with other countries, as Michael was pointing out, this is going very, very in depth to every and each one of the indicators. Also, this is Brazil is the first country that we release this report after the publication of the OAS IDB regional report. Having used in the CMM methodology developed by Oxford, it's also very important. Oxford, besides leading the vaccine race, is also a leader on cybersecurity issues. And the CMM is a great tool for all countries to identify, to assess what needs to be done on cybersecurity. Something very important that really touched us. And we were speaking with the team in Brazil, with the Brazilian government from the SIC. And also we were speaking with General Oliveira Freitas a few moments ago, is that the transparency. All our counterparts in the government always highlight the importance of the transparency and showing all the institutions and all the people in Brazil and even around the world how Brazil, where Brazil in terms of capacities, and based on this also to continue improving. So we found it like a really humble position, and we are very, very grateful for that approach, for that support. In the first dimension, cybersecurity strategy and policy points out that the last decade has been quite transformative for Brazil, and I would like to say the past 2 years have been really amazing. The hosting of a series of important international events led to a series of cyber attacks during these major events. The incident handling processes during these activities demonstrated that critical organizations for cyber defense are capable of collaborating and effectively mitigating the impacts of these attacks or incidents. This has led to further developments in strengthening cybersecurity policies in the country. A key element, and we understand that there were several tries, but we want to highlight the effort of this administration, is the adoption of the National Cybersecurity Strategy early this year, focusing on 10 strategic actions that should guide cybersecurity in Brazil. We also were honored to do a presentation of this by Colonel Sabat right when the pandemic started, and it's amazing the work that Brazil has done again over just the past months, years. The second dimension, cybersecurity, culture, and society, describes that the cyber culture in Brazil is variable. It's changing all the time, meaning that this is dependent of each sector, each region, and the economic outlook of the country. Brazilian society as a whole still lacks cybersecurity mindset. Users may be aware of the risk, but they often fail to act accordingly in their everyday practices. As our Secretary of Multidimensional Security mentioned earlier, cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. And this means that it's not only the responsibility of the government, but also all the society as a whole. Government, private sectors, and regular citizens need to invest on cybersecurity. Of course, the government has a big responsibility, but all of us, we need to secure our digital lives. The third dimension, which is education, training, and skills, identifies that the country lacks a national program, coordinated program. There are several for raising awareness about cybersecurity. Currently, today, there is not a designated leading organization for this, although there is a great potential to address a wide range of topics and target multiple demographics in the country. Cyber awareness remains somehow low, especially at the executive or senior levels, which calls for graded support in the educational and professional development opportunities at all levels. The fourth dimension, which is the legal and regulatory frameworks, highlights that Brazil started its adhesion process to the Budapest Convention just a few months ago, allowing for greater avenues of cooperation in cybercrime investigation and prosecution. This is a significant step for the authorities in Brazil and for any country around the world who have recognized the need to improve informal and formal cooperation mechanisms. Here, we like to highlight also the important role of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Itamaraty, who has been a key actor, fundamental actor in this process. The request of the adhesion of Brazil to the Budapest Convention, it's really important milestone, not only for the country, but for the whole region. Brazil is a key and a major player, not only in soccer, but also on cybersecurity. And we really are very glad and happy that this happened. The fifth dimension, standards, organizations, and technologies, recognizes that the driving force for adherence to cybersecurity standards is a market demand and a business needs. Organizations have established already formal processes to disseminate information automatically to CERT-BR and even to CETIR-Gov. Conversely, private organizations are excluded from the government threat intelligence sharing. Our work, again, we have been very, very honored to develop our work with Brazil. I would like to say also that my first boss at the OAS, one of my first bosses, was a Brazilian from Abin, and it has been always a pleasure to work with him and other colleagues that I already mentioned. We have been able to work on several initiatives, more than 10, which some may say that it's a small number, some others say, wow, you've been able to do this. For us, it's not just about the number, but actually about the impact that we're doing, the quality that we're doing, the willingness, the political commitment that we are seeing. We have been able to develop activities focused on gender, like the cybersecurity women challenges that has been implemented with the kind support of the government of the United Kingdom and Canada. We have been delivering courses on cybersecurity and international law applicable to cyber operations, a key issue right now in the situation that we're living of extreme digitalization. We have done the work of 30 years in 3 months. So here, international relations, particularly international law, is a key fundamental issue. And once again, we would like to highlight the role and the leadership of Itamaraty, both at the national and the international level. We have delivering trainings on open source and intelligence training for law enforcement. We also, with the support of the City Foundation, the Citibank Foundation, have a specific project focused on bringing youth to the workforce in cybersecurity. And again, we have been delivering several capacity assessments for specific entities, and more particularly the prosecutor's office, which we are very pleased also to work with. As key recommendations, there are one to propose for communication. The communication center on the issue of streamlining information sharing channels, making these channels more agile and clear. This also represents holding frequent discussions on how cybersecurity, on how to target, how to approach this issue. This can also translate into creating more outreach and educational campaigns for the public. Second recommendation, it's coordination and collaboration. These types of recommendations call for greater collaboration between private and public sector, as well improving internal and external collaboration. This recommendation calls for the appointment of specific agents lead to the development of cybersecurity initiatives and responsibilities. The third recommendation, it's education. We always say educate, educate, and educate. These recommendations are based on developing and supporting professional development opportunities for both employers, employees, and students in all the country. Integrated specialized cybersecurity courses in all the degrees, from the primary to the post-secondary level. We don't only need professionals, we also require people with technical skills. And this is an opportunity, not only for Brazil, but for the whole region, to provide labor to other countries. Right now, with this digitalization that we are living, this is a great opportunity, and we need to make sure that all our citizens have the best technical skills and certifications. The fourth, which is results and delivery, calls for the establishment of metrics. Data is important. Metrics, procedures, and guidelines to benchmark the progress and tracks the commitment of policies and initiatives. Implement what we call, or what is called, smart objectives: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound, as well as PKI, which are performance key indicators to guide the decisions. In addition, to collect, evaluate feedback from stakeholders on an ongoing basis. This is applicable to all sectors across the board. Not only the government, the private sector also need to make sure that they get data that they can measure, because at the end of the day, that's what is going to the boards, either in the government or the private sector, or even civil society organizations. There is no prescriptive way or any way to conduct or implement these recommendations, particularly in a country like Brazil, who are so diverse, and which is a good thing. It's always good to be so diverse. However, we propose a couple of principles and best practices which might be relevant for the success of increasing and strengthening cybersecurity capacities both in Brazil and the region. The first one is establish a vision and an end goal of the policies. Select the main pillars that will structure the policies. Identify all relevant stakeholders. This is fundamental. That way we can collaborate even greater. The fourth, seek the support of the national, regional, and global partners for the implementation of your policies. Not only partners please and come with partners and allow me to tell Ms. Davidson, like the United Kingdom, the OAS, as well, other partners that have been supported the efforts of Brazil in the region, like the United States, Canada, the Netherlands, Estonia. Several of these actors, I'm sure, will be available to work with you. And the fifth, which is something I think important not only in cybersecurity, but in our lives, be willing to continually change and adapt. Sometimes we are reluctant to change. Of course, sometimes change could be difficult because we are not used to do certain things in a certain way. But let's see all the changes from a positive way, including the change that COVID-19 has brought to us. What comes next? We must use this report as a blueprint for stakeholders to design effective public policies intended to strengthen their national cybersecurity strategies. All efforts must be coordinated with the private sector, the civil society, and the academia, which is really strong in Brazil, in order to ensure greater effectiveness. From the OAS, we acknowledge that the change is not easy, but as our societies to continue to rely on ICTs, a greater prioritization of cybersecurity is needed both in Brazil and the region. Or we say that cybersecurity should be embedded by default, and it's impossible to invest millions or billions in digitalization and connectivity without cybersecurity. We will continue pursuing a greater collaboration with you, General Oliveira, Freitas, with all your team, and with all the Brazilian institutions in order to strengthen cybersecurity capacities in the country and, of course, the region. We are confident that many of you will be a catalyst, and we count with your support. Those were the things that we would like to share with you. And once again, we would like to express our gratitude to the leadership of our organization, as well to our colleagues in the cybersecurity team, my colleague here, Rolando Ramirez, who have been not only moderating, but also making that we are able to be here presenting this today. Thank you, Rolando. This is also one of your last activities, and we want to express our gratitude. With that, I leave you with the executive, with Rolando, who will introduce our executive secretary for the final findings and conclusions of this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Belisario, and thank you for that comprehensive presentation on this report. We would like to acknowledge that due to lack of time, we will not be able to answer to your questions. However, we invite you to send it to us at our email, cybersecurity@oas.org. We will be also sharing the different links to access to this report, which is based in our website. Thank you again, Belisario. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Ms. Allison August Treppel, Executive Secretary of the Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism. Allison, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Rolando. General Antonio Carlos Oliveira Freitas, Special Advisor of Information Security. Colonel Arthur Pereira Sabat, Director of the Institutional Security Secretariat, distinguished authorities, invited guests, very warm welcome to you all. Boa tarde. Eu entendo português, mas falo muito pouco, então falarei em inglês. On behalf of the Secretariat of the Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism, SICTE, of the Organization of American States, I am very pleased to offer some brief closing remarks for this important event. The two-year process that you've heard about to compile, consolidate, and issue the Cybersecurity Capacity Review would not have been possible without the valuable support of the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center of the University of Oxford, and our colleague Michael Goldsmith, who has accompanied us here this afternoon in particular, the Federative Republic of Brazil, and particularly its Institutional Security Office, and CICTE's very own cybersecurity program. And of course, none of this important work would have been possible without the generous funding of the Government of the United Kingdom and the Government of Canada. As you've already heard over the past hour or so, our goal in issuing this report has been to contribute to the development of cybersecurity capacities in both Brazil and in the hemisphere, and more importantly, to ensure that those capacities have greater reach and impact. So as you read and consider the various aspects of this report, we invite all of you, the stakeholders, to reflect on three simple questions. What do you hope to achieve with regards to cybersecurity? How will you achieve it? And how will you evaluate whether you are reaching those goals? And if necessary, how will you adjust course if those goals are not being met? We heard a bit from Michael and from Belisario that work remains to be done in Brazil and indeed throughout the larger region to achieve full cyber maturity. But I think it's very important to take just a few minutes to highlight again some of the good and important advances that the government of Brazil, as well as key national stakeholders, have already achieved in its path towards cyber maturity. In particular, we applaud Brazil's accession to the Convention on Cybercrime of the Council of Europe, otherwise known as the Budapest Convention, in 2019, Brazil's adoption of a national cybersecurity strategy earlier this year, and also the establishment of clear guidelines so that computer security incident response teams, CERTs, in Brazil are able to respond quickly and appropriately to a cybersecurity incident, including registering all national incidents and publishing annual statistical data on threats. As you may know, among other things, the Budapest Convention obliges participating states to develop comprehensive national legislation to address cybercrime. This, together with Brazil's full implementation of the newly adopted National Cybersecurity Strategy, will enable Brazil to strengthen its domestic legal framework, promote successful enforcement efforts, and support a more comprehensive national approach towards cybersecurity, particularly during the period 2020 through 2023. The OAS and the CICTE Secretariat, through our cybersecurity program, have been working now for over 15 years to help build cyber resilience of our member states. Through initiatives such as this report, we will continue to bring together government officials, technical experts, and other cybersecurity stakeholders to bridge knowledge gaps, identify problems and solutions, and ultimately help us all face the challenges that cybersecurity presents in a proactive and effective manner. And so we stand ready to continue to support Brazil and other states in the region to develop good and sustainable public policies, to strengthen technical capacities, and to encourage greater information sharing and awareness raising within our various communities. Because we believe that states must work from this three-pronged approach to address cyber threats, to prevent and mitigate the impact of cyber incidents and attacks, and to be able to adapt to the ever-changing nature of cybersecurity and the ever-changing threat landscape, particularly during a pandemic. So with that, I am pleased to conclude this event, thanking you all again for your interest in this topic and for your participation here today. Special thanks again to our esteemed panelists, particularly Michael Goldsmith and my cybersecurity program manager, Belisario Contreras, for sharing their valuable insights. We remain grateful, as always, to our donors, including the governments of the United Kingdom, Canada, the United States, and the Netherlands, as well as other partners for their support and commitment to promoting greater cybersecurity in Brazil and in the region. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful weekend. Muito obrigada.
Thank you so much, Allison. Again, we invite you to access the report in our website. The links are available in the chat. Queria também les lembrar que podem acessar o relatório no nosso sítio web. As ligações estão disponíveis na barra de chat. Com isto, damos por concluída neste evento. With this, we conclude this event. Thank you so much for your participation and interest.